You want a war? You're gonna get one.
Now get the guns, the drugs from my generation. I'll take the fall, the saints, the confirmation. And it's a sex, the god, the fakes, the fraud, the messing with me. Come on, come on, come on. Let's get it out. Move to the music, play that fucking music. Live through my music, yeah.
Welcome back to Reliving the War. It's episode 150 this week, and again, WWF Raw's War takes place on a Saturday night. Raw's in Lowell, Massachusetts, airing on September 12th, and Monday Nitro takes place in Pensacola, Florida, September 7th, 1998. Raw pulls a WCW this week by showing a replay of a pay-per-view match. They aired the Lions Den SummerSlam encounter between Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock this week, so I've removed that match from the head-to-heads. There's no point in keeping it in. There's also a big lack of main eventers on Raw this week. There's no Steve Austin, no Kane, no Undertaker, no Mankind. Vince McMahon isn't even here, so as long as WCW doesn't completely mess it up, which is a possibility, but if WCW doesn't mess up, then this should be an easy win. On Sunday Night Heat though, Vince McMahon announced the breakdown main event. Steve Austin's going to defend the WWF Championship against Kane and Undertaker in a triple threat match. It's quite an interesting matchup, seeing as the brothers just recently got back together, but do remember that McMahon guaranteed that Austin would lose his title at the next pay-per-view, so we'll wait and see what happens on September 27th. Oh, this is exciting. We're dashing through the corridors at high speed. Something awesome's happened at the beginning of Nitro. It's graffiti by the Ultimate Warrior. Hogan says, "What do you mean he's invisible?" to the Booty Man, and Booty Man says he's gonna pay for this. Hogan goes to find JJ Dillon, but he's interrupted by Vincent, who says Brian Adams and Scott Norton have been taken out and sent away in an ambulance. So Hollywood and company make their way down to the ring, and seriously, this is the most passionate Hogan's been for a Nitro promo in a long time. As much as we poke fun at the whole Warrior thing, and indeed it deserves to be made fun of, Hogan's all fired up tonight and it's good to see. Hollywood says he wants Warrior in the ring right now. He also says he's had enough of Bret Hart, so the Hitman's off the War Games team and the Giant's in. There's no way the Warrior can get through the Giant, and if Warrior's not going to show up, then the Giant's going to go hunting for him. Warrior doesn't make an appearance, but I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing him a little later on. Our opening match features Konnan taking on Bull Pain, like a bull that's in pain. He was a job guy for the AWA and WWF in the 80s, and he also worked briefly for ECW in 1995. It baffles me that WCW had to bring in guys like this though, when they already had one of the best rosters in the history of pro wrestling during this time period. Konnan gives BP a chance to get his stuff in, and we see this 2.5-star frog splash right here. Our main man then took an X Factor, and Konnan won with a Tequila Sunrise. What a shocker. The commentators announce a Curt Hennig versus Dean Malenko steel cage match for tonight, and they also repeat what Hogan said: Bret Hart is out of War Games. JJ Dillon, however, says otherwise when interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund. Dillon says the contract's already been signed, and if there's problems within NWO Hollywood, then they need to sort it out amongst themselves. Bret Hart is still in War Games, and he will represent the black and white. DDP then gets interviewed in the ring, and he's got mixed emotions about the Wolfpac asking him to join the Red and Black Attack. Page remembers the Outsiders trying to get him to join the original NWO, and he says he felt like an afterthought. And now the NWO's been split apart, and Kevin Nash wants Dallas to once again join a faction. The thing is, DDP doesn't trust Kevin Nash, and DDP doesn't like to be threatened. Big Sexy makes his way down to the ring, and Kevin says Page was asked to be part of the most elite group in pro wrestling history. If DDP doesn't join the Wolfpac, then DDP's now in the Wolfpac sights. He's now the enemy. Page confirms that he doesn't trust Nash due to history. As a matter of fact, he's shocked that Lex Luger and Sting trust Big Sexy after everything that's happened. So here comes Luger and Sting to back up their big buddy. Lex says his ties with WCW were as strong as anyone's when he joined the Red and Black. Sting came on board too when he was considered the savior of WCW. Both men trust Kevin Nash, and DDP says Nash will jackknife both of these guys if it means winning War Games. Sting says he's already been powerbombed by Kevin, he still has trust in Big Sexy, and the only way to solve this, if Page doesn't want to join up, is to have a tag team match tonight on Nitro. So Page Edge should go and get Roddy Piper, and the two can go up against two members of the Wolfpac. Page says he'll do it, and so will Piper. He also says he wants Big Sexy in that match later tonight.
And you, big boy, you are getting bang!
The promos keep coming when Roddy Piper walks down to the ring. He says he's not DDP's lapdog and he doesn't like being told what to do. He actually talks a whole lot of sense when he says there's really no teams in this War Games match at Fall Brawl. And yeah, WCW are trying to create arguments and dissensions within each faction, and right now it appears that the Wolfpac are the most unified group. Piper says he's not on Team WCW, he's on his own just like everyone else in War Games. But regarding tonight, he will team up with DDP. So that's a good little lapdog. Wrath then destroyed Lenny Lane in a one-on-one match. Nothing to say about it really, but here's the meltdown. Oh yeah. That silly disciple knocked himself out while sleeping like a bat again backstage. He does this all the time, and every time it happens, a member of the NWO has to come save him. Knock it off, Brutus. Jeez. The Hitman then comes to the ring for a match, but a few guys from the Black and White show up, led by Curt Hennig. It looks like Bret's going to get jumped, but the Stinger runs down to save the Hitman. Bret thinks this is pretty awesome. The Hitman wants a high five, but Sting tells Bret to back up. Sting then hands Bret the bat. He turns his back just like the old days, but Bret won't strike his best friend in the whole world. Next up, Evan Karagias had a chance to wrestle Big Papa Pump, and you can guess how that ended. Before the match, Rick Steiner talked about teaching his brother a lesson in respect, and Scott addressed his brother after this pre-tape ended. Basically, Rick's a coattail rider, and now he's stuck with the losers of WCW. Scott's the better Steiner brother, he's gonna prove that at Fall Brawl, and Evan Karagias gets messed up pretty bad. Evan was supposed to wrestle someone else, by the way, but the big bad booty daddy wanted to bully this poor guy while Buff Bagwell called the action at the commentary table. It ends with a Steiner recliner. Alright, time for this interesting episode of Raw. We start off with Edge versus Jeff Jarrett, while over on Nitro we've got Hector Garza versus Juventud Guerrera. Edge gets in the first big move with an enziguri, and Southern Justice then make their way down to the ring. Either Dennis Knight's really big, or that's a tiny little guitar. Edge delivers a corner clothesline, but Double J fires back with a power slam. Jarrett drops down to hit Edge with an uppercut, but Edge replies with a Northern Light suplex. It really does feel like a WWF house show here. I know it's only moments into the first match, but the whole card for tonight just doesn't feel like a regular episode of Raw, and that makeshift entranceway doesn't help either. Not that it's bad, it's just not what we're used to. Marc Canterbury trips Edge up, and Double J clotheslines the future rated R superstar over the top rope. A baseball slide then stuns Edge, but he holds his own against Jarrett on the outside, and he performs a diving crossbody back inside the ring. A reverse Russian leg sweep from Double J gets followed up with a DDT as the back and forth action continues. A missed dropkick gives Edge an opportunity to try for a cover, but Double J kicks out and Edge takes a vertical suplex. Not to be outdone, Edge performs 3 suplexes in a row, with the final suplex being a front sit-down variation, and this is enough to make Henry Godwin jump on the apron. Edge takes care of Marc, but the other half of the robot monster slides the guitar into the ring, and it's normal size now. What's going on? Maybe Dennis Knight is absolutely massive. Edge takes a guitar shot, the referee calls for a DQ, and that's your Raw opening match over. Southern Cyborg Justice have their own little business cards. Problem solvers until you have a real motherfucking problem like Steve Blackman. Over on Nitro, we have a Cruiserweight title match. Remember when the commentators were building Hector Garza up quite a bit during his debut? Yeah, they don't seem to care too much now. A missed Stinger splash from Hector leads to Garza ending up on the outside, where Juvi pulls off a top rope crossbody. He goes for it again in the ring, but Hector performs a dropkick followed by a spine buster. Juvi then finds himself in a reverse rocking horse, not a move we see a lot on Reliving the War, and when Juvi gets out, he ends up taking a hard clothesline. Check this out, Juvi goes for a top rope Frankensteiner, and yeah. Garza looks a little annoyed when he follows this little mishap up with a powerbomb, but he's not winning the Cruiserweight belt tonight, folks. He misses a lion salt, though gotta say his motion in the air looked great. But Guerrera capitalizes with a Juvi driver, and Guerrera retains his championship. Not a terrible match, just one that's hard to care about really. Bradshaw vs. Droz is next on Raw. On Nitro, Curt Hennig and Rick Rude cut a promo. Droz and Bradshaw had a decent brawl for all fight, which Bradshaw won. Let's see if Droz can win a regular wrestling match against Big Bully Bradshaw. Also, that stuff about WWF having nothing for Bart Gunn? Well, a good start would have been putting Bart in this match instead of Droz and have Bradshaw get disqualified for beating him with a chair or something. WWF having nothing for Bart Gunn is the absolute biggest load of horseshit. Droz gets a boot up in the corner and he hits a clothesline. The crowd chant boring as Bradshaw counters a backdrop attempt by slamming Droz's head into the canvas. Bradshaw then performs a back suplex and a body slam, and just as Droz replies with a power slam, Jim Ross announces the main event for tonight, Kaientai versus D-Generation X. The match goes to the outside where Droz loses his advantage, though back in the ring, Darren goes back in control following a jumping shoulder block, a clothesline, and a jumping back elbow. Bradshaw replies with a big boot. There's another clothesline from Droz. There's zero heat here, folks. Zero heat. It ends when Bradshaw uses the ropes when covering Darren. Nobody in attendance cared, and look, there's another clothesline. This time it's from Bradshaw, and JR calls this move the clothesline from hell. On Nitro, Mean Gene wants to talk to Curt Hennig and Rick Rude regarding negative comments they made towards Arn Anderson and Dean Malenko in this attempt to bring the Horsemen back that's went absolutely nowhere. Curt can't believe that the Enforcer turned his back on the Horsemen last week. It was Curt who slammed the door shut on the faction, and Rick Rude says Arn Anderson has been sent out to pasture. 15 years ago, the Horsemen were something, but in 1998, it's a horse of a different colour. As for Dean Malenko, the little horseman wannabe, and his challenge for a cage match tonight, Curt says Dean Malenko doesn't know what end of the horse he wants to be. The word's going to find out though that Dean's the horse's. Ask Rick Rude about it. Ravishing Rick Rude agrees. The hits keep coming on Raw. Marc Mero versus Miguel Perez. On Nitro, it's Ernie Miller versus Kenny Chaos. You see what I mean about this episode of Raw? Usually in between 3 mid-card matches, we'd at least have some sort of promo concerning the main eventers, but we have nothing here. The crowd chant for Sable as Mero and Perez get to work. Marc goes down after a shoulder block and he takes a break on the outside following a dropkick. When the match resumes, Jackie distracts Miguel and this lets Mero go in control for a bit, and Miguel ends up hitting the mat following a corner clothesline. Jackie loves it when the fans at ringside begin chanting her name. Marvelous Marc pulls off a knee lift in the ring as Jim Ross reminds viewers that Raw returns to its normal TV slot on Monday night, so that means fans could watch this episode of Saturday Night Raw, they could then watch Sunday Night Heat, and then watch Raw again on Monday. Our match ends with Miguel hitting Marc with a DDT, but Marc instantly replies with a TKO. I don't think we're going to get any storyline progressions at all on Raw tonight. We're just going to get a bunch of exhibition matches. On Nitro, Tony Schiavone thinks Ernest Miller hasn't had a change in attitude. He's always been a jackass. Don't hold back there, Mr. Schiavone. The Kid sweeps Kenny Chaos and he thinks he's hot stuff after delivering an arm drag. Kenny gets his eyes raked when building a comeback and he gets thrown out of the ring, but he comes back with a springboard clothesline before applying a standing armbar. The Cat's inexperience then gets shown when he takes a running crossbody and he kicks out at 1. Chaos follows this up with a swinging neck breaker, and the match ends when Chaos goes for a springboard double axe handle, but Ernie moves out of the way. We see the Cat's front spin kick, and Miller wins via pinfall. The Cat grabs a mic and he says, "In the ring right now is a WCW superstar and a world karate champion. There's no one who can beat Ernest Miller, and if anyone would like to come down and try their luck, then they're more than welcome to." No one shows up, but giving Miller this mic time was a good call in my opinion. We talked about Jericho getting mic time last week and how important it was to Chris, so the same thing applies to Ernest Miller. It's up to Miller to make the most of it though. Golga and Kurgan versus the DOA, Stevie Ray versus Chris Adams. I'm sorry guys, I can only work with what I'm given. Very rarely I want to skip ahead while watching Raw and Nitro every week, but I've got the urge to jump ahead and just cover the last half hour of both shows. Hopefully things improve, but Raw in particular hasn't been great so far. Jobbing out to tennis on the USA Network really isn't what WWF needed during this extremely crucial time in the Monday Night War. Violent J says he doesn't ride a motorbike, but he used to ride a Huffy, and he'll ride that Huffy all over the Backer Michael Laggers if he has to. The rest of the oddities are disgusted at Golga's smelly farts. Bald Backer number 1 tries his luck against Big Kurgan, but that doesn't end too well. A big boot puts the dirty old asshole down, and the oddities work together to perform a double shoulder block. Absolutely riveting stuff. Cartman's wearing the King's crown at the commentary table. It's definitely a highlight of this match for sure. I'm sure Eric's having a wonderful time listening to Jerry Lawler jokes.
Oh, Jesus, why'd you just cut off my balls?
Back in the ring, disaster strikes when the top rope breaks and nobody knows what to do. Too many big boys in the ring and too much weight being thrown around. Check this out, Golga gets his head whacked on the turnbuckle pad and the tension makes the opposite turnbuckle pad fly into camera shot. Something about that made me laugh. The DOA used the top rope to choke out Golga, but you can sense some panic in the ring as the guys look at each other and they look at the referee wondering what to do next. So someone tells the ICP to get in the ring and call for a disqualification. Shaggy 2-Dope takes a powerbomb while Violent J takes a beating on the outside. And again, fair play to these dudes. I know there's a lot of folks who couldn't care less for ICP, but it's clear they loved pro wrestling and they weren't afraid to get in there when needed. Still an absolutely dreadful match though. Over on Nitro, it's more predictable pro wrestling. Chris Adams hasn't won a match on Nitro in ever, and Stevie Ray being a pretty fresh member of the NWO means he's guaranteed to win this one. Chris tried, Lord did he try, but not only did he have to deal with Stevie Ray, he also had to deal with Vincent acting up on the outside. All hope was lost the moment Stevie locked in this devastating nerve pinch. Chris did get a pop when he smacked Vincent off the apron, but Stevie delivers a super kick and the gentleman gets wiped out with a slapjack. So there you have it. Joining the NWO in this era just means you blend in with all the rest of the faction goons, especially if you weren't a main eventer to begin with. I do like Stevie a lot. I don't care much for his time in the New World Order. The Rock cuts a promo next on Raw while Chris Kanyon takes on Scotty Riggs on Nitro. A definite improvement to our head-to-head so far. Check out The Rock's attire, check out the footwear. Only the People's Champ can get away with this look, but what would I know? I'm just a Rudy Poo jabroni. Rock says at SummerSlam he did exactly what he said he was going to do. He beat Triple H from pillar to post for 30 minutes. Rock watched Triple H climb the ladder and retrieve The Rock's IC title as the people's blood flowed down the Great One's face. And it was at that moment when The Rock realized he will always be the People's Champ. Rock says it seems like a lot of people don't know their roles in WWF right now, and that includes friends and enemies, two of which being The Undertaker and Kane. Rock knew he was going to get his ass kicked last week, but Rock was happy to take that beating. But if Kane thinks he's going to get away with chokeslamming The Rock, then he's got another thing coming. The crowd pops when Rock says he's going to lay the smackdown on the Big Red Machine in the very near future, and it's pretty much a babyface promo right here from The Rock and a babyface reaction from the audience. What an absolute master on the mic The Rock was though. There was a time when Rocky Maivia had absolutely nothing to say on the mic, and now it's exciting when Rock gets some promo time. Thankfully, we've got a lot more coming in the future. The WWF then replayed the Lions Den match from SummerSlam at this point. As mentioned earlier, we're going to skip over this, but check out the SummerSlam video on my channel if you want to see what happened. On Nitro, Lodi demands that Perry Saturn replaces Kanyon in this next matchup. I thought it was a bit odd that Kanyon was going to wrestle Riggs anyway, seeing as they're both members of the flock, but that's not something that stopped this faction fighting among themselves before. Saturn has to wrestle, seeing as he's Lodi's little bitch for a few weeks, but remember, at Fall Brawl, Saturn's mission is to set the flock free by defeating Raven. It's all Scotty Riggs to begin with. Perry takes a dropkick, he gets rammed into the corner, and Riggs performs a running hip attack as Raven mocks Saturn on the microphone. Raven tells Saturn to get up and do something, but Riggs is seemingly having the most dominant performance of his entire career tonight on Nitro. Saturn gets knocked down a few times after strikes from Pirate Riggs, but all the hard work gets wiped out when Saturn lands a super kick. Riggs then gets suplexed out of his boots and Perry then begins laying the knees in. He's getting vicious here, Sid vicious. It goes to the outside where Raven demands that Riggs fights back, but Scotty gets thrown into the ring steps and this one's all over. Back in the ring, Saturn stares at Raven before picking Riggs up for a Death Valley driver. Saturn wins the match, but the torment is far from over. Raven and Lodi demand that Saturn break Scotty's fingers, and if he doesn't do it, Raven will break Saturn's fingers. Saturn refuses, so Kanyon attacks him from behind, and Raven makes good on his promise. Raven snaps Perry's fingers twice, and this right here, this is the kind of thing the flock should have been doing a whole lot more. The group were misfits, they struggled to fall in line, and they fought with each other quite a bit. So this kind of dysfunction within a dysfunctional family should have been used a whole lot more in my opinion. They tried it before, they tried it with Van Hammer, and if you go all the way back to the very beginning, you'll remember Raven's weird relationship with Stevie Richards, but it does feel like it's too little too late at this point. And also, just to be clear, I don't blame Raven or anyone in the faction. It's all about the NWO and WCW. Put it this way, if the Four Horsemen couldn't survive, then what chance did the flock have? Too Much takes on Southern Justice next on Raw, while over on Nitro we've got Chris Jericho versus Jim Neidhart and an Eddie Guerrero promo. Even though the bookings on Nitro aren't all that great this week, it still feels way more interesting than what Raw's got going on. The fans don't really want to cheer for any team on Raw, but I was rooting for Too Much. I'm not a fan of giant robot monsters. Brian Christopher kicked Phineas's ass at the opening bell, but Scott Taylor didn't have as much luck against Henry. Too Much joining forces is definitely the way to go. Scott and Brian are able to bring the hog farmer turned robot down with a double suplex, but quick tags, along with some classic cheating, bring Southern Justice back into the match. It ends with Too Much firing up after Taylor gets a hot tag. Brian and Scott hit a few drop kicks, but Too Sexy goes over the top rope and Marc pulls off a scorpion death, a problem solver. Southern Cyborg Justice wins again on Raw, and that tag team title shot looks inevitable at this point. On Nitro, Chris Jericho says he's the walrus, cuckoo kachoo, and he promises to never treat his Jerichoholics wrong, even though he's better than everyone in the arena. Jim Neidhart looks like he's already wrestled a fucking Iron Man match as the bell rings. A shoulder block makes Jericho go to the outside, and back in the ring, Jim uses his strength to floor Jericho again. Chris gets slammed to the mat after the Anvil lifts the TV champ up by the hair, and just like last week, there's something happening in the audience that makes the crowd lose interest in the match. The Anvil throws Jericho up in the air, Chris comes crashing down and it hurts inside, but no one cares. Chris comes back with a dropkick, it then goes to the outside where Jericho keeps the pressure on and the TV champ's looking pretty good now. Back in the ring though, Chris tries a body slam and he buckles under the weight of Big Jimbo, but he is able to pull off a suplex. Jim ends up on the outside again and Chris tries a slingshot crossbody, but the Anvil grabs the champion and Chris gets rammed into the ring post. Back in the ring, the Anvil misses an aerial attack from his brother-in-law's rope, and then we get the finish. Oh boy. So Jericho tries to apply the Lion Tamer, and I'm not sure Jim knows how to take the move. I mean, there's not much to it, just go limp and Chris will put you in position without hurting you. But Jim looks like he's just crawled out of a bin after a bad acid trip, and the ref says, you know what, ring the bell, it's over. The bell doesn't ring though, so Chris tries another Lion Tamer and Jim crosses his legs while trying to make it to the ropes. Before he knows it, Billy Silverman again calls for the ring bell and Jericho wins via submission, I think. Anvil knows he messed up here, the commentators are confused about the ending, and Jericho just gets out of the ring as fast as possible. God knows what the Anvil was thinking here, but I'm sure wrestling on TV was the very last thing on his mind. After the match, Eddie Guerrero comes out for a promo. He's wearing a Pencil Busters shirt and on the back it says, "Fire me, free me, please me." And Eddie says he loves working in WCW because Uncle Eric won't let him work anywhere else. During that match he had with Brian Adams, Guerrero hurt himself. He hurt his back and his doctor says he needs an MRI. While Eddie's under contract, Eric Bischoff has a duty of care. Eric's responsible for his superstars if they get hurt in the ring, apparently. So rather than get lawyers involved and rather than make this a legal issue, Eddie announces that he's going to take the night off. He's going home and Eric Bischoff can't do a thing about it. Dustin Runnels versus Vader on Raw. On Nitro we have the Curt Hennig versus Dean Malenko cage match. So we go back in time and we see another Vader versus Dustin Runnels match. Remember, these two feuded quite a bit when Goldust turned his back on Marlena. As the bell rings, we see Val Venus walking through the crowd with a sign that confirms what Dustin's been saying all along, and at first this doesn't distract Runnels at all. The match goes to the outside where Dustin gets a little vicious and the cameraman almost falls over when Vader gets sent into the steps. It's almost like Dustin wants forgiveness for what he just did, so he gets in the ring and he gets on his knees, allowing Vader to just throw himself into Dustin. Look at this. After getting knocked down a few more times, Dustin's able to hit Vader with a clothesline, and then he notices Mr. Venus in the audience with his hilarious sign. Dustin points to the sky and he says, "He's coming. He is coming." But this again allows Vader to take advantage and Dustin almost gets his head taken off with a clothesline. The big man then performs a Vader bomb and my, Vader actually wins a match via pinfall. A very short match here, but one of the better ones on Raw this week. The bar's pretty low, unfortunately. On Nitro, however, you should consider this match as your main event because the other remaining matches are even shorter than Vader versus Dustin. We have Dino Machino versus Curto Perfecto, and it starts off with Curt in control. Dean takes a lot of strikes to start us off, but he's able to pull off a drop toe hold that gives him a little bit of breathing room. Curt tries to leave the cage or maybe talk to Rick Rude, but Dean pulls him back in for a back suplex, and then we see Dean's signature leg lariat. For some reason, Curt then holds onto the cage ceiling and he pays dearly for this tomfoolery. A missed corner cage charge brings Hennig back into it, and Kurt's going to focus on the shoulder for a while. Hennig's putting pressure on while looking for a submission victory, and it looks like Rick Rude's tampering with the door lock on the outside. The NWO have something planned here. Dean's shoulder's in a bad way. When he tries to fight back, he goes down again due to the pain. Rude leaves those brass knucks that don't look like brass knucks, but we'll call them brass knucks anyway, at the cage door, and Curt nails Stinko Malenko with a hard punch, but Dean kicks out, showing that he's not ready to give up just yet. Curt continues to target the shoulder and arm. He's completely destroyed Dean in this match so far, and it's just a matter of time now before we see the perfect plex. Another arm stretch leaves Dean in a bad way, but the two end up butting heads, and this creates an opening for the Iceman. Dean's comeback is very short-lived. A low blow puts Curt right back in the driver's seat. A cross arm breaker isn't enough to make Dean tap out, and Dean hangs in there until he gets a chance to catapult Hennig into the cage. The crowd pops as Dean goes for a cloverleaf, but Curt makes it to the ropes. The referee then goes down when Dean gets picked up for a scoop slam, and as Dean applies the cloverleaf again, Eric Bischoff and Stevie Ray run down to the ring holding the key to the cage door. Rick Rude and Stevie get inside the cage and Dean gets destroyed again. Rude attacks Malenko and he makes sure the referee's out cold so Rick himself can count Dean's shoulders to the mat. The pinfall won't officially stand, but the NWO doesn't care either. Curt wants to do the same thing he did to Ric Flair back at Fall Brawl last year. He wants to slam the cage door on Malenko's head. So Dean gets dragged out and put in place for what could be a career-ending injury. The crowd then pops as Arn Anderson runs down for the save. After taking Rude and Hennig out, Double A gets in the ring and the audience lose their minds as Arn removes his shirt before throwing down with Stevie Ray. The audience really make this moment special as Double A makes sure another wrestler doesn't go through the same trauma that Ric Flair did a year ago. Stevie gets kicked out of the ring, Arn closes the cage door so no one else can get in to hurt Dean, and yeah, definitely the highlight of the week right here. Looks like we might be seeing a Horseman reunion after all, boys and girls. Get ready for some serious business. We've got an Al Snow promo next on Raw. On Nitro, Goldberg destroys Scott Putski. Snow comes in through the audience, and if you've ever wondered what promo was used to get the samples for Al's theme song, well, this is it.
What does everybody want? What does everybody need?
Al says he's not leaving the ring until he sees at least one WWF official, hopefully one with a pulse. Patterson, Briscoe and Commissioner Slaughter walk out and Al officially calls these guys the Stooges. He's gonna play a game of The Stooge is Right, and he introduces the contestants as Sarge Chinny McChin, Geraldine Briscoe, and Patty the Platypus Patterson. Al says that Head's the new commissioner, and Slaughter tells Snow to get out of the ring, and because Slaughter isn't playing the game right, Al eliminates him from this impromptu game show. Geraldine gets eliminated when he can't name an opponent for Al to face tonight on Raw, and Patterson gets eliminated when he can't tell Al where he's meant to go to get changed for his upcoming match. The Stooges want Al to leave. He's clearly being a little erratic, so Snow obliges and he does leave, but before doing that, he wants to give Patterson a little head. Snow dashes back out through the crowd. The fans in attendance absolutely love Al Snow, by the way, and this was a highlight of Raw this week. Good fun. Right, so Goldberg goes for a power slam, but Putski counters with a suplex. Goldberg no-sells it, Putski gets speared, and the match ends with a jackhammer. I am not kidding, I've not taken anything out of the match. This is exactly what happened, and to be fair, the crowd absolutely loved it. There's no one more intense than Bill Goldberg right now, and I do enjoy seeing him go a bit mental in between spears and jackhammers, but my god, the man is absolutely unstoppable, and the crowd can't get enough. So intense is Billy Boy Goldberg that he falls on his ass when trying to celebrate his big victory. I must have watched this back about 10 times. Bobby Heenan confirms that it's 141-0 this week, so we were right to take Tony's number on last week's episode. Goldberg didn't wrestle anyone between last week's Nitro and this week's episode, so the streak counter is really at 133 wins in 0. That Road Wild Battle Royal really messed things up. Tag team action next. D'Lo and Mark Henry versus the Headbangers on Raw. On Nitro, it's Sting and Lex versus Piper and DDP. I know I harp on about this quite a bit, but it's an absolute joy watching D'Lo's confidence get better week after week. Even Mosh can't help but shake his head and strut like the European champion. Mosh counters a powerbomb attempt with a sunset flip. He pulls off his usual dropkick, arm drag and armbar combination, and he screams "You suck" at D'Lo before tagging in Thrasher for some double team action. Poor D'Lo gets flapjacked straight to hell, but luckily he's got his trusty chest protector. Big Mark Henry tags in and Mosh saves his partner from a front power slam. The Headbangers then pull off a double suplex as Mosh comes back in, but Henry pulls off a gorilla press slam before tagging D'Lo back in. Mosh gets dominated here. D'Lo performs a body slam followed by a leg drop. We then see a second rope elbow drop from the European champ, and D'Lo plants the Headbanger with a running sit down powerbomb before tagging in Marc. Marc drops a big elbow on his opponent, but the hot tag opportunity comes when Marc misses a corner attack. The Headbangers get to work, Henry and D'Lo get whipped into each other, and D'Lo ends up on the outside where Mosh and Thrasher continue the beatdown. The match ends when Chyna hits the ring to once again attack Mark Henry, and it looks like this Chyna problem isn't going to go away anytime soon. Officials try to pull Chyna away from Marc, but that doesn't work at all. The ninth wonder of the world takes out referees as she continues her attack, and DX minus X-Pac has to run down to the ring to stop the beatdown. D-Generation X are up next in the Raw main event. Can Kaientai do the unthinkable and beat the Degenerates on Raw Saturday night? Stay tuned to find out. On Nitro, the fans have been throwing confetti for the NWO all night. Black and white for Hollywood, red and black for the Wolfpac. It's pretty cool. Roddy Piper and DDP's relationship has completely changed over the course of a week. They get in each other's faces before starting the match, and when Lex pushes DDP and he gives him the old crab pose, Piper decides to tag himself in and he lights the total package up big time. The hot rod bites on Luger's forehead, and Sting watches on as Piper throws Lex into the corner before bringing the fight to the outside. Luger can't get started here. He takes a beating back inside the ring as Piper screams at Paige, "This is war," before tagging out. And it looks like some of that intensity rubs off on Paige because Dallas has a lot of urgency behind his strikes. Lex goes down after a back suplex. He then takes a neck breaker. The bionic forearm gives Lex a chance to tag out, so yeah, a bad showing here from the total package. Sting does a lot better here for Team Wolfpac. DDP gets his face planted in the mat, and Sting follows this up with an inverted atomic drop. Check out Sting's DDT here too. Good stuff. Not to be outdone, have a look at Paige's DDT. Oh yeah. The match then breaks down. All four men get in the ring for a war. So Kevin Nash comes down and we've got ourselves a DQ finish. Nash shows here that he no longer cares about Paige joining the Wolfpac when he jackknifes his old friend in the middle of the ring. And again, it shows us that at this very moment heading into War Games, the Wolfpac are the most united team. The match was way too short, but what we got was good. Shame about the standard WCW Nitro finish though. D-Generation X versus Kaientai ends Raw this week. On Nitro, Hollywood Hogan calls out the Warrior.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages.
Shut up.
Triple H says DX came, saw, and kicked ass at SummerSlam, and indeed they did. Every member of the faction won their matches at the pay-per-view while their opponents tonight lost against the Oddities. Still, DX feel like they need to cheat in order to get an early advantage, so Kaientai are already winners in my book. Billy Gunn poses in the ring, and this awesome sight makes Sho Funaki back up into the corner. A rake in the face gives Funaki a little hope, but Billy fires back with a press slam, and if that's not enough, he picks up Teo and he throws him into Funaki. Hunter gets tagged in and he's not going to bother taking his backer Michael Liker hat off for this one. So Teo kicks Hunter so hard that the hat flies off and he tells DX's leader to suck it. No fear, absolutely no fear. Hunter makes his opponent pay with a facebreaker knee smash, a few hard chops in the corner, and the Harley Race knee. Road Dogg then gets tagged back in and James proves that he's the weak link here because Teo puts him down with a low drop kick, and Kaientai are going to feast on the real Double J. We see the elbow train from Kaientai and DX DX don't seem to be in much of a hurry to get in there and help their buddy. Kaientai hold Road Dogg up so Taka can drop kick him in the face, and Dick Togo pulls off a frog splash after James gets put down with a double back suplex. A big clothesline to Taka buys Road Dogg some time, and X-Pac gets tagged in to end this Raw main event. Taka gets kicked in the head before getting sent up in the air, only to get slammed right back down again. Michinoku then gets sent into DX's corner for a Bronco Buster, and I thought this finish right here was great. The Outlaws get involved for an assisted X Factor, and DX win the match. It was predictable for sure, but it was still a pretty fun main event. I wasn't expecting a whole lot, but it did surpass those expectations. At the same time though, I'm so happy that we're done with these Saturday Night Raw episodes. So, Hogan says he and the Giant have looked everywhere for the Warrior, but he's nowhere to be found. Warrior doesn't have the guts to fight any NWO member one-on-one. Instead, he's resorted to sneak attacks. So, Hulk and Giant are going to play the Warrior's game. Warrior wants to fight Hulk. Hogan knows as much. So Hollywood wants the steel cage to come down, and if Warrior's got the jam, he'll come down and face Giant and Hogan right now. The cage comes down. We see some of that sweet Warrior smoke as the boys enjoy a good old-fashioned hotbox. And there he is. The Ultimate Warrior used his magical warrior powers just to appear in the ring. Now, Hogan is a big stoner, so he's able to withstand the big Warrior smoke, but Giant's completely wiped out, and he's already planning on picking up a few Bob Marley CDs when Nitro goes off the air. Hogan has to deal with the Warrior though, and when Warrior swings his steel chair, Hulk's able to duck out of the way, and Warrior gets hit with a Hogan chair shot. It has no effect at all, so Bischoff opens the cage door and Hogan gets out of the ring. Bischoff locks the door again, the Giant's in there all alone with Warrior, but the leader of the OWN can see Giant's having a great old time on the mat, so Giant gets another blast of the Warrior's savage cabbage, and the Ultimate One vanishes. Hogan doesn't know what's going on, neither does Bischoff. Nitro fades to black, and so does the Giant. It's a revolution, folks. Join the revolution or get left behind. Nitro wins Reliving the War this week. Raw was missing too many big names. It felt like a house show, as mentioned earlier on, and while I do think a few guys and girls made the most out of their time on Saturday Night Raw, it was still a pretty weak show. Nitro wasn't brilliant, but like last week, it was still better than Raw. We've got 70 points for Raw, 64 points for Nitro, and 16 ties on the board. WCW continued to greatly benefit from these unopposed Monday nights, though they dropped quite a bit from their record-setting rating last week. It's a 5.5 this time around, and that's still a pretty big number, by the way. The final rating for Raw is unconfirmed, but estimates online are around the same as last week, a 3.0 or just below. Fall Brawl 1998 is our next video in the Reliving the War series, so come check it out this Sunday and we'll see what's up. You guys seem to enjoy the premiere of SummerSlam a few weeks back, so set your notifications up and we'll have a chat while watching the pay-per-view review. There's a few things that happen on Thunder that we'll need to take a look at, but I'll include all of that in the Fall Brawl video. Thanks for watching, guys. We've had over 150 episodes of Reliving the War if you include the early unopposed shows, so I just want you to know that I appreciate you sticking with me on this journey. Milestones are cool and all, but I'll celebrate properly when we reach the very end. I hope you enjoyed this one though, and I'll see you all on Sunday. Take care.
Hello, ladies.
The posters take so long, so I've got to sing this song to let you know how I feel. What's the deal, baby? And I can't wait for you and the things you make me do. My heart is ringing, so I'm singing this song for you. I'm honey, 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 honey. So honey, I'm honey, honey, honey. I'm honey, 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 honey. So honey, I'm honey, honey, honey tonight. I search from town to town.